The Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the September 13th, 2022 school committee meeting, and the public can access this meeting through WebEx technology. The Burlington School Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV, and video audio recordings are being made. The way to dial into this is the access code is 2338-775-4697, and the password is Tuesday. So the first item up will be the approval of the warrant.
I move that we approve the warrant as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5-0. It's the count tonight. All righty. Very good. So the next item is public participation, and we'll take participants both remotely and in person. It doesn't look like we have anyone in person. Just a reminder, comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. Bob, do we see anyone who wants to participate tonight? All righty. Well, we're moving along quickly.
Everybody's out having fun tonight.
That's right, in the rain. All right, so the next item is information and reports. Dr. Conti?
Again, Madam Chair, most of the information is going to be conveyed through the regular agenda. We haven't really had any subcommittees to date in the year. We did have a building committee, but we can do that under the Fox Hill update in the agenda.
Sounds good. And
I could just report for subcommittees. I'm on the Youth and Family Services Board, and we just had our quarterly meeting yesterday. So there's a couple of new members on the board, which is nice. We got some updates. I didn't have a lot of updates on the schools because school just started, but I did review for the other folks some of the things we've been doing. And I know that the police department has increased their crisis counselor, Karen Di Renzo, I think her name is, to full-time, which is really helpful because she's been quite overbooked. And I know she and Chrissy Concession are going to be meeting, and I know that they'll be working. They've been working together, but they'll be working together more, and that was good to hear. So we're working as much as we can with agencies in town.
thank you, Ms. Simon. And okay, Mr. Foss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, the townwide DEIC has been meeting regularly. The next big item for us is a joint working session with the Select Board that's coming up on the 19th of September. And that's it. Thank you.
And I guess I can, the Transportation Committee's also been meeting regularly, and we're trying to come up with recommendations for the town. And hopefully, once we get that document put together, we'll be able to present it.
I guess I could say one more thing.
Sure.
The Recreation Commission has its regularly scheduled meeting tomorrow night in this very room, 6 o'clock.
All right, thank you. And Ways and Means, I guess Roger Riggs has moved into a different position, and we now have Steve Moran. Anything you'd like to report on? Oh, you got a mic.
I don't have anything to report officially.
Okay,
I don't have anything to report officially, but I'm happy to be here.
all right, welcome.
We're happy to have you, Steve.
Yes.
We do have, are we going to talk about the warrant article tonight? The
what?
warrant article for the social studies request?
Again, not on the agenda, but we can certainly talk about it, and we can put that, when is town meeting? Is it?
28th. We have a wait.
We have, I think we'll have a meeting next week. We can make sure it's on the agenda.
Yeah, we have a Ways and Means meeting next Wednesday night.
Okay.
Okay,
Did we vote on it?
thank you, Mr. Moran.
We did vote on it. Everything's fine. It's just we're looking for a discount that's associated with the 5-year agreement. School committee is limited to 3 years. If we want to go beyond 3 years, town meeting has to approve the agreement.
Got it.
So everything is exactly the same as approved. We just need town meeting to vote on a longer contract so we can get a bigger discount. But we will put it as an agenda item on a week from tonight, and we can have a more detailed conversation, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Dr. Conti. Next item up is Learning, Equity, and Thriving. Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have some subcommittee items under there. I just wanted to start by, with the opening by introducing you all to, again, Marianne Fabry. Marianne is here and is our new school committee secretary, so she's here during the day, and she is also will be attending your meetings and taking minutes in the evening. So Marianne, welcome, and I'm sure you'll find these meetings as exciting as we all do. So that's what I would say. Madam Chair, with your permission, just the opening update. Personally, I just felt like this opening felt much more typical to me than the prior 2 years. I thought it was very positive. A good day for us as we send all the students home who arrived in the morning, and we achieved that, so that was a good first day. We know we have some bus challenges to discuss. A bus update is on later in the agenda. We believe we have an option that may help us make some changes there. And then also want to talk with the committee a little bit about how we plan, because we've been doing the same bus routes using the same expectations for a while from the committee, and maybe thinking about it a little bit differently. We don't need to decide tonight, but just thinking about it a little bit differently may allow us to be more responsive earlier, but it's a challenge. Madam Chair, you know, by being on the Transportation Committee, that getting across town isn't as easy as it used to be, and so our buses are sort of caught in that same in that same traffic. We have seen good ridership, so I think that's a positive. But we just have to work out the details and the time. But other than that, I think the opening went well. Everyone, the teachers came in. I think they were all very excited. I got to every building, I think, and again, the kids were just super excited to be back. I think we have a new kindergartner. Is that correct, Ms. Massardo? No? What?
Oh, you got a first grader.
First
now.
grader
Big
now.
guy, yeah.
Oh my God, it goes fast, huh?
Yep.
And so, so we have some young students coming in. So that's just been, it's just really exciting to be feeling like a regular school year. So, Madam Chair, with your permission, item B is really closely connected to. It doesn't really make sense unless we're talking about item H. So I'm going to just move that under item H. And again, I don't really need a vote on that. The item C, policy review agreement. What was in your packet tonight is the policy review agreement from MASC, and that's really in two parts. So we did discuss this at a prior school committee meeting, and I asked Dorothy Presser to formalize the agreement. So you have two agreements. One is for a policy analysis and review, and I think, again, that contract is in there. And the second agreement is really to have MASC host an electronic version of the policy manual that is open for everyone to access. And as you make changes in policy, MASC then would sort of make those changes in the policy manual. The way Ms. Presser and I talked about this work taking place is for the MASC to get all of our existing policies, then look at, they have sort of a model policy manual, and they'll do a comparison, and then she will only pull out policies that are either missing or she feels needs to be updated. And so we'll bring sort of that, those modified policies or need for policies back to the committee, and she feels like that's the timeliest and most thorough way that we can go through this instead of going through policy by policy by policy. So you have the agenda. It is, Madam Chair, it's an agreement, so you would need to sign that agreement, but I also think it would be something if the school committee wants to discuss or take a vote on. Again, I'm really just going to be working with Mary Ann to get MASC all the policies. I'll certainly be involved in that, but ultimately, this conversation is going to come back to the committee in a few months where you'll have, again, a list of policies to either create and adopt or to amend because they need to be updated.
Thank you. And so which two were you combining, C and
I'm combining B and H.
B? Okay, B and H.
Yes, and we are discussing C presently, Madam
Okay, that's
Chair.
what I thought. Okay. I heard the B and H, and I'm like, didn't sound like that's what you were talking about. Ms. Monaco, you had a question.
How much does it cost?
The contract, I think, was in your packet. I think it was, I'm sorry, say that one more. $12,950 for both programs. I think it's probably around 9-something for the analysis, and I think it's 33,000 or so for the hosting, I'm guessing.
One is 4,450 and one's 8,500, and those one of them's broken out over 2 years for the hosting fee.
That's the 4,000, right?
Yes.
And that covers 2 years. After that, is there an annual fee?
Yes.
And how much is the
What's-
annual
yeah.
fee?
I believe it's
50?
$950 going forward.
Yeah, that's the way I read it.
$950 a year for the hosting fee?
Yes.
After the first 2 years?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted everybody to hear those numbers. That's why I wanted them talked
Yep.
about.
And I should have had them, I'm sorry.
And we had budgeted for those.
That's why you got Nicole.
Yes, and we did budget for them, yes.
Now, again, we could postpone discussing this and vote on it another night, or we can look at it and vote on it tonight if everyone had a chance to look at it. Martha, looks like you have a question, so.
I'm ready to vote on it. I'm very much in support of this. I've been trying to get us to update our policies for 8 years now. I did get a start when Mrs. Monaco and I looked at some of the policies. We reviewed some of them with Dr. Conti. We got through, I think, one section. We were on section 2 and COVID hit, and I am very much in favor of doing this with the MASC support. It will be thorough. I believe it'll be thorough, and it'll help us so that we know what our policies are, and that so we can confirm that we're following our policies and that we know what they are. And if there are areas that we don't have, they would have a good idea of it. I also support them continue. I mean, we're only agreeing in this contract for the initial review of all the policies and suggestions of what we might add, and then 2 years of getting it up on the website. But I definitely support both parts of this contract, and if we need to vote on it, I'd be happy to vote tonight, or I could vote next time, but I definitely support it. I did have one question for Dr. Conti in terms of as it goes along. I know that there could be questions that come up, and I know that Ms. Dorothy Presser would certainly be able to talk to you. They do talk about having a project liaison officer. Do you have somebody that you have in mind that would be in that position, or is that someone like Mary Ann or Terry or someone, or is that someone, who do you see as the project liaison officer?
My understanding in speaking with Ms. Presser is she just wants someone to be able to contact and coordinate information within the district. So I was thinking Ms. Fabry would be her contact. And then obviously if there are any questions that require school committee answering, then those questions would be taken to the committee here. But if she needs to track down different versions of a policy or something like that, I think she doesn't necessarily want to wait for me. I think she just wants to have a contact that she can work with right away.
I support that, and I also, there's also a comment, a section regarding a subcommittee that would review the work in progress, and I'd be interested in having you set up that subcommittee, and I'd be interested in being on it, to just review. I have time to be doing that kind of a project, and I'd love to be a help in any way to make it go smoothly. If she has if we want to have reviews going as the work in progress, if you don't feel the need for that, that's okay too. But I wanted to raise that issue.
Through the chair, Ms. Simon, that might be a bit of a longer conversation because many larger school committees, as you know, have school policy subcommittees. And so they would do some of that initial work. I don't believe we have an established subcommittee on policy. If that's something this committee would like to vote on and adopt or set up, then absolutely we can do that. It could also be informal. If you want to have regular check-ins or something, I can talk to Ms. Presser about giving us regular updates so you're sort of aware of what's going on. So I think it can go either way. I think the term subcommittee is more formal in both in its formation and how it operates. And again, there are many school committees across the state that might have 13 members, 21 members, and they are more likely to have subcommittees associated with the work that they do.
Okay, thank you both. And Ms. Monaco has a question.
Yeah, Martha and I did a lot of work on this stuff, and prior to Martha being on the committee, I did some work on it. If you do decide to have some sort of a formal or informal subcommittee, I'd be willing to do it with Martha. I think I have one of the original policy manuals in my closet from a very long time ago.
If only Mr. Murphy were here to make a comment. I can't, so.
No, you cannot comment the way Mr. Murphy would.
So,
No, I think I got it from Ed Fogelberg.
So-
Way back years ago, he gave it to me.
So again, policies have changed. Obviously, there are many policies that we need to adopt. I think 5 or 6 years ago, we have sections that I think are more updated than others. But you'll see that as we get through this, and I do think this is the timeliest way and most efficient way to go through this. Any one of my colleagues who has their policy manual hosted, she said the committee never wants to go back to managing that themselves. So I know this is a 2-year agreement, but I would wager that once established, this committee is going to appreciate having that responsibility and those updates being made regularly and available. So
We did talk about this at another meeting, so this could technically be a second reading, right?
it could be. It's not really a policy. It's we did discuss it. I think I just wanted to make sure that you saw the contract. It was in your packet, and again, this is really your expense, and it's agreement between yourself and MASC. I am strongly recommending that you sign the agreement and move forward. I don't believe it would require a first and a second reading. So if possible, I think just the more time we have, the better this would be.
All right, I move that we approve the agreement/contract between this school committee and MASC regarding policy analysis and digitizing policies.
A second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I do just have one more question, Dr. Conti. I know you keep saying 2-year agreement, and I think it says that the goals can be completed in 18 to 24 months. Do we envision it taking that long, or is that just the 2 years that we are initially signing up for?
I think when we spoke, she said if we were going to do this policy by policy, it can take quite a long period of time, and that's why she suggested what most districts are doing now, because there are many districts involved in the same process, is this committee would allow MASC to do the initial analysis. It's just much more efficient, and what she brings to this committee are only areas that either need to be created or updated. So if you have 3 sections that look good to MASC, we don't need to review those 3 sections. So I think that's kind of worst case scenario.
Okay.
She's hoping that in 5 or 6 months, and I'm sure it'll be depending on the condition of our existing policies. And I'll have a better idea of that for the committee, I'm sure, once Ms. Presser sees what exists, and then we can move. And then again, I'll be able to tell you. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
And obviously, we wouldn't start paying the hosting fee until there was actually something to host. And all I'm saying is my colleagues who are at that stage really appreciate having the manual hosted.
Thank you. And Ms. Simon?
I'd just like to add that I actually don't think it will be the 5 to 6 month process, because I have looked through the policy manual, and I think it is in need of a lot of upgrades. So, well, whatever it takes, we'll do it. And you agree, yeah.
Okay, so,
Can I make one other comment?
Sure.
We did this with MASC some years back, and we never finished it. The whole contract ran out and it wasn't done. So I think they've probably upped their game as far as approaching it since then, because there is so many policies and they cover so many things that it's a tremendous amount of work to get them all in order and up to date. And then by the time you turn around, it's time to update something else.
Absolutely, and I also think the process now is much more digitized. I think MASC has added staff. I also would ask the committee to strongly consider, many communities felt like the policy language had to be very, very specific towards their particular community. And I would say in sort of the changing regulatory environment with ed reform, I think some of the language that they have, the boilerplate language, is probably good enough for us to utilize as a policy manual. If there are local practices that you want to make sure are reflected, we can sort of manage that locally. But again, I think the policy manuals I'm reading are looking more and more common across communities.
Can I make one more comment?
okay, thank you. So we have a
Can I make
first.
one more comment?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And my understanding is if we're paying for consulting services and it says we list our project goals and MASC is committing to completing those in 24 months, we should be able to, if we're responsive, we should be able to complete this time. Is
Yes.
that the expectation?
Yeah. And again, I believe the last time we took this on, because I remember, God, it was probably close to 15 years ago, when I first came.
It was before you.
Well, even before me, it might have, we were working with 3-ring binders, Ms. Massardo, so I'm hoping now we won't do that.
Any more
It's down at 2
questions?
rings.
Listed in the contract about 3
Yes.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, so we have a first and a second, and we've had some discussion. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 500.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, the committee. And if you would sign those, then I can start that process moving with Ms. Fabry's help.
Okay. So did you want to go to item B?
No, I want to do,
You go in your own order
No,
then,
D.
Dr. Conti.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard B. I apologize. D, yes, out-of-state travel. Mrs. Concession, I'm sorry, Mrs. Robinson Concession, our Director of Mental Health, is asking to attend the Castle Community Celebration Conference in Chicago, Illinois. Castle, creates the social emotional learning standards that we utilize. They're a very well-known and nationally renowned standards that we utilize, and I would recommend that the committee grant her permission to attend this conference.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? I'm in favor, so it's 500.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your permission, on to agenda item E, which is the School Resource Officer Memorandum of Understanding and Update. The background on this is actually, I think, very interesting and complementary to Burlington. Again, for my time in Burlington, we've always had a memorandum of understanding with the Burlington Police Department. Not every community had that established. I think 2 years ago, and again, I'm losing track of time, so I just say 2 years now, probably prior to COVID, but,
2 to 10 somewhere.
2 to 10, somewhere in that block of time prior to COVID. Attorney General Healy wanted to standardize some of the memorandum of understandings between police departments, school resource officers, and school districts. And She actually asked districts to provide any districts that had memoranda to send those into her. And some of the language that you're reading tonight actually, I think, came from the local Burlington version. This is, again, this is a memoranda that really now is being strongly encouraged by the Attorney General's office, and it details the agreement in terms of sharing information, confidentiality, role of the school resource officer. And again, it's a document that I've already signed with Chief Brown. We highly value our relationship with the Burlington Police Department, and they are sort of critical members of, obviously, the community, but also of the school district. Our school resource officers, Keith Shepard, Vito Costa, we almost feel are part of our faculty, and I think they just do a fantastic job with our students. So I couldn't, again, I couldn't be more supportive of that relationship. I believe this is more informational. I think I have already signed the memoranda, but I just wanted to make the committee aware that it exists, and just take this opportunity to thank the Burlington Police and Chief Brown for their continued support. We are scheduling, I believe, for our next meeting, or the first meeting in October, Chief Brown is going to come out and meet with the school committee in executive session. We do that annually, or we did, again, prior to COVID, so we're going to restart that meeting. So it's probably going to be within the next meeting or two where Chief Brown will come out and meet the committee and answer any questions
Before the meeting?
that you have. We have to set up executive session. We may do it before. I'm going to see when he's available and when we can make that work. Certainly won't make him wait until wait till the end. We'll see when the folks are available. So again, informational. If anyone has any questions about the memoranda, I will try to answer them as best I can, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware that it exists, and then the purpose of that memoranda.
Ms. Simon?
So I do have a couple of questions. Is this template then something that's used across the state? Is this a template?
I believe it is. It starts from a template. It is a template
It
that
is a
they're
template.
asking us
Okay.
for us to utilize.
And so then our legal counsel has already reviewed it, and there's no concern. Is it the same as what you signed last year?
It is the same that we've
Okay.
signed in prior years.
Okay.
And again, I'm not sure Darren has reviewed it this year in particular. I can
Yeah.
certainly have him look at it, but it's really no different than what we've been using over the decade that I've been here. And again, it just reaffirms and formalizes what is already, I think, a very strong relationship. So again, I don't have any concerns about the memorandum.
Okay. And it's maybe some of my questions I could ask when we meet with Chief Brown. In terms, I did have some questions about, it talks about under certain circumstances, when it refers to compliance with FERPA and student record regulations, so I'd be interested in hearing about that. I'd like to know what kind of training. I know there's a requirement that SROs get some training. I'd like to know what kind of training they get. That kind of, I have a few questions like that, but I would say that might be something we could discuss when we meet with Chief Brown. Does that sound like the right time to do that?
Through the chair, my suggestion, Ms. Simon, is if you could email me your questions, and
Okay.
that way I could get them to Chief Brown ahead of the meeting,
Okay.
and that way he could be prepared to answer them.
Okay. It does say that we will develop and implement a simple and objective complaint resolution system. Do we have that? That's like the kind of question I have, so
So you
I
can
will do that.
Yeah, no,
Okay?
that'd be great, and I'm sure he would, again, welcome any questions
Great.
from the committee.
Thank you.
Ms. Simon. Next item.
Thank you. Every year, again, we did not for the prior 2 years, but prior to that, in August, we create the We Are Burlington profile. We have this out to all of our schools. It is something that I also shared with Mr. Sagarino. It's important for us to know the students that we're serving and who they are and sort of their what they bring. I think the overarching message to me in the information that's in front of you is we are a very diverse student body, that many of the I always mention the town meeting. Town meeting doesn't necessarily look like our classrooms, and that's okay, but we need to be mindful of our classrooms. But it's just such a strength for us, because it's a wonderful opportunity, again, to have our students experience locally the world that they're going to be operating in when they leave us and enter the working world, or whatever their future holds. So again, I think there's certain profile information that you can see. I do think the Ms. Ciccolini did want me to say that the special education numbers are not accurate, that I need to update those, because there's a difference between students who are sort of in the pipeline or receiving services. So she's going to redefine that for us and update those numbers. In fact, she already has. I just didn't get a chance to do that in your packet, so I will get you some updated numbers in regards to there. If you look at our students on 504s, we really have probably too many, given the population, the overall enrollment that we have. So we are scheduling 504 training. Again, in 504 is a regular ed process, not a special ed process, but we're scheduling some training. We want to certainly support students. We believe we can support many more in our district accommodation plan. So in differentiate our instruction that's available to every student, I think we can do more of that. So that might be something that we look at. We have 57 languages that are spoken in our district, which is remarkable. And again, I think I mentioned in my opening message to the community, after English, I think the top 5 are Spanish, Portuguese, Gujarati, Hindi, and Arabic. And then after Arabic, Luganda, which is interesting. So we have a growing number of ELL students, and I think that's reflected in our operating budgets, Mr. Moran. So you've seen more support for our English learners. I think we said we had 358 students who were born outside, 358 students who were born outside of the United States. So about 10% of our student body are born outside of the United States. Our economically disadvantaged student population is around 20%, and so and that's been growing as well from I know from my initial years here. And then we have 47 students who come from military families, and that statistic was added to our state reports, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, because we were in very long-term conflicts as a country, and there were many military families who were impacted by different deployments. And it's important for us to have that information, because obviously children are impacted by those deployments, and we need to make sure we're supporting those families as well. Our overall enrollment is slightly down, but our August enrollment changes throughout September. Our official enrollment is October 1st, and we'll give you an update on our enrollment after our October 1st reports are done. Nicole, that drives our Chapter 70 funding for the state. So again, our October 1st number is sort of the official number, but we just want to give you a preview. So again, every teacher has access to this, and there's building-based. And I'll answer any questions, or if you want to make any comments. Again, I just think it's we just have a wonderfully diverse community and student body to work with. It's just very exciting.
I have a question.
Thank you for the update. And Ms. Massaro?
I just wonder if we could circulate this more widely. I think it's eye-opening, and it's great to see. And I think it's we call it We Are Burlington, and it really defines the school district. And I would just love, I don't know if it needs to go home with parents, but more prominent on BCAT or anything like that. I don't know. But I think it would be interesting to, you said the teachers have access to it. Just brainstorm some ways we could get it out more broadly too.
Yeah, Through the chair, let me correct the special education numbers, and then maybe we can, we'll
Even the
certainly
October 1st
Yes, we
update,
can
maybe,
post it,
yeah.
and maybe we can do that. We'll send it to Mr. Moore, and we can send it to you. You can get it out to the Ways and Means Subcommittee, or the whole Ways and Means would be great. And again, Mr. Sagarino does have a copy. I'm assuming he shared that with the selectmen, and, it's just who we're serving.
Question through the chair.
Yes.
Is it on the website? Will it be after the October 1st numbers are updated and the special ed numbers?
Yeah, absolutely, we can put
Good.
it up there. That's absolutely we can.
Thank you.
All right. And the next item is COVID protocols.
Okay, COVID protocols. The general protocols, and they've shifted slightly, but not that much, are really shifting the burden of the COVID pandemic back onto families. So we are no longer testing, and so if a child is ill, we just ask that parents keep the child home. If they're feverish, if they have anything, there's no requirement that families test. If they do test and their child is positive, then again, there is a 5-day requirement for that child to be home, and then they can return to school when they're symptom-free. So they can't return day 6 if they still have a fever, for instance. So there's a lot of common sense with that. I'm sort of treating this the same way we're treating strep throat or any other virus. And again, the responsibility is really falling on families. I could report to you the number of COVID cases we have, but I'm really not sure of the accuracy, because I have to rely on, the district has to rely on families testing and then letting us know. So there are some families who may not let us know, and there are some families who may not test. So I can't, I could put out a number. We have 3 cases, but I don't know if that's 30 or I just don't know.
Things
So.
have changed.
So again, I think we're still practicing. We have precautions. We have air filters in all of our classrooms. I think during the good weather, we're trying to be outside as much as we can. Teachers are taking kids out for snacks. So we're trying to have as much air circulation as possible. The maintenance crews did replace all the filters as they have the prior 2 years. I think that we're trying to get, again, as much fresh air as we can into the classrooms. And, we will be prepared for that. There may be some changes, or there may be a vaccine. I think that is supposed to be more a better treatment for some of the changes in the COVID virus. Again, that's way out of my area. We'll listen to the health experts to do that. But again, the choice whether to do that or not will fall on parents for their students. And again, for the adults, it'll just be determined whether they want to move forward, just similar to a flu shot, where I think the state did try to require a flu shot, and that didn't go well, and I don't believe they're going to require the flu shot or the COVID shot or anything moving forward. So I just put it on there because we are mindful of the virus. We are sort of practicing precautions, but there's really no I think parents and families just need to treat this like any other virus. If their child does have a positive test, and let's say there's one child in the home and there's another child in the home that's asymptomatic, the asymptomatic child can come to school. Again, we would hope they would be masked, but again, we can't require that. That is something that the family would need to decide. So parents just need to watch their children for symptoms. And I'm assuming they're doing that already for anything. And if the child is ill, if there are any questions, they should call their school nurse, and their school nurse can help them. Even if their child is out sick and they have a question as to whether they can return, if they call their school nurse, I think they'll get great information moving forward. So it's become a family-managed illness at this point.
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Simon?
Yeah. Yes, I have some comments. I am really glad to hear, and for people to know that we're continuing with the air filters that there was a cleaning going on this summer, that we're trying to use the outdoors, and I think that will be, helpful. I am concerned. The evidence still is starting to show up that wearing masks can prevent. It's less risky, and each of us and each of our families are making our own risk assessments at this time. But I just wanted to remind people that vaccinations do make it about 5 times less likely that people are going to get COVID. Certainly people vaccinated are getting COVID. There was an article in today's paper about long COVID. Having a vaccination makes it about 75 to 85% less likely for people to get long COVID. Young people are getting long COVID, and it's affecting not only their physical health, but their cognitive function. That can be for children and adults. And so my responsibility, I feel, is to speak and to request that we try to promote vaccinations. I was wondering, I know last year there were vaccination clinics, and I would like to know if we could, I don't know if we continued them or not, but if we could get those have vaccination clinics. There are the new boosters that are, I believe, targeted for the newer variants. And I'd like to find ways to make vaccinations as easy as possible and as accessible as possible for all of our families and students. And certainly last time it was open to the whole community, not just to the school district.
Through the chair, Ms. Simon will certainly look into that. I'm not sure how the vaccines are being distributed. It might be through CVS or other sort of stores. I have to call Susan Luminello. Again, I'm not sure if their vaccines are arriving through the Board of Health, or if there are a lot of sort of private organizations that were delivering the vaccines during the pandemic. I'm not sure if they have disbanded or they're still getting access to those vaccines or not. So again, I owe Susan a call anyway, so I'll call Ms. Luminello and try to figure out what to do. I have no problem having the buildings host, but we're certainly not going to be delivering the vaccines.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if they need a space, we can certainly provide them a space and then communicate when they will be in town and when they'll be available. But again, the choice as to whether to participate is, again, really falling on individuals, and it's not the CDC isn't directing districts to make any of those decisions anymore.
Yeah, and through the chair, clearly it is an individual choice that people are making, and we're all making our own assessments of the risks. But I would like to see if after you talk to Susan Luminello, if we could promote vaccinations. And I also wanted to confirm that our policy for staff being vaccinated, it continues with our new hires. Is that true?
I believe it's true. I have to go review that, but I don't think there's anyone who wasn't, who questioned that when they came to work here. And again, there wasn't mention of boosters, so we're talking really about vaccines or potentially a 2-round vaccination from, again, two years ago. So,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. And next item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Planning for Success document that's in front of you, we started this in August, and it's almost at its final form. There are a few things missing from here. One of those missing things are my goals. So this is, again, another draft, but you'll see my goals at our next meeting, which is next Tuesday. You all know by regulation by now, the district has to have a district improvement plan that the school committee adopts. That's essentially what this is. The Planning for Success process, that's not a name that I made up. That is it's a process that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education promotes for districts to do 3-year planning and for us to provide some direction. So if you really want to know where we're going to be focusing moving forward, this is going to be a document that is going to help guide those conversations. This will also be the document where now we'll have school improvement plans, which are also required that you'll start to see in January. So if adopted by the school committee next meeting, then Deb Clark at the BECC, our 4 elementary principals, Carrie Purchase at the middle school, and Mark Sullivan at the high school will work with their respective staffs, with their school councils, then to create a 3-year planning for success document for the BECC, for elementary schools, for middle school, and for high school. And again, you'll see that in January when they come in. They'll present their budgets, they'll present their school improvement plans, and then you'll adopt those as we move forward. So that's the cycle of events. I just want to highlight a few things and make sure that I read that. So again, in the opening page, we talk a little bit about the planning for success process. And then on the 4th page, we do articulate the school committee's mission, vision, and again, the equity statement was added last time, but I just wanted to highlight that again, and that's educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she, they need to develop his, her, their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child or individual. I wanted to highlight the equity statement because of the word thrive, because it's one of our 3 focus areas. And again, I'm saying 3 focus areas, but it's really not to shortchange facilities and finance, which are other focus areas. So I apologize if that's the case. But we're really looking at learning, equity, and thriving are going to be our 3 areas of focus. You can see some of our initiatives and strategies that are going to be part of our work. I think the reality of district improvement planning is when we talk about sort of things year to year, there's very little that we work on actually takes place in a year. So a lot of these initiatives have already been started. They should be familiar to you. And it's really just articulating that over time. So we're going to try to stick with certain things and make progress on those things. And then there should be outcomes that you see as a result of our efforts. There's some overlap, obviously, between learning, equity, and thriving and some of what we're working on. We can't work on things that are completely distinct in my perspective, nor should we. So you'll see some overlap. Again, I just wanted to highlight a couple things under learning is that one of the things that we are trying to work on is a district curriculum review process. So we really want to have a pre-K to 12 curriculum review, a multi-year process where we look at, for instance, our alignment to state standards, sort of what we're doing, the outcomes of what we're doing, and then if we want to pilot new stuff, we would do that potentially in year 2, and then maybe we do an adoption in year 3. So what would that look like? It might look like once we have a process in place, it would be very transparent, it would be very public. You would be aware of what we're working on. It may have a budgetary impact because if we would need to pay people to participate in this, we would need teacher participation outside of the school day. But if we're looking at science, then we would have our pre-K to 12 science curriculum, again, aligned with state standards, and we would have conversations about what outcomes our science curriculum is generating, the content of what we're doing. And so we might look at science on a 3-year cycle, and then the next year look at English, the next year look at math. So we're constantly looking at our curriculum in a very sort of public and transparent way. There would be on-ramps for parents to see the curriculum and to comment on the curriculum. And again, they can't change state standards, but they could certainly comment on our curriculum, and there would be opportunities for students, again, in age-appropriate ways to comment. So that's, we would sort of create that on-ramp. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working on in terms of learning. The part of this plan that I also want the school committee to think about, and it was a homework assignment in August, and so I'll remind you of your homework, is towards the end of each strategic objective, so if I'm looking under learning, I think what we should talk about are key metrics that the school committee is interested in seeing at different times of the year. So I mentioned October, January, and June, sort of in this draft. So there may be some metrics. What I'm going to ask is there not be 50 metrics, and I just threw a bunch down, just talking with principals. Many of the ones I threw down are much too granular from my perspective for the committee, but the example that I'd like to say would be under learning, the committee should expect, for instance, in October, we're going to go over the district's MCAS scores from the prior spring, because that's usually about the time we get the scores. So you should expect, again, an MCAS presentation for district performance in October. I think you should also expect an enrollment as a metric presentation in October, because that's when we have to report that as well. So I think if you could think about some of the metrics and make them more predictable, so then next year, when we do the same metrics, we can see either growth or decline, we can talk about impact, we can have sort of a conversation that seems to be grounded in the results of what we're doing. And I'm not saying all those results are going to be positive, but again, you learn just as much from a no as you do from a yes, and then we might need to change some direction. I think it would help. I feel like the last 2.5 years we've been like that 6-year-old soccer game where there's a crisis and then we all jump to the crisis, and then the ball pops out, we all jump to the next crisis. And I just want to try to be a little bit more predictable and articulate what it is we're working on. And then again, you should know in October we're going to talk about MCAS scores from the prior year. And again, I'm working with principals to think about what data points they would like to see, and then there may be some year-end June data points that the committee might like to look at too. If you want to look at growth scores, for instance, we could put together some idea of student growth over the year. Attendance might be something that's really important to the committee. That might be connected to our thriving, right? If students are thriving, they're typically attending school, and you would want to see high levels of attendance. At least I would like to see high levels of attendance. And then we can break the data down potentially by different groups of students. And maybe we're seeing attendance issues with a certain group of students, and then we need to talk about why that is, and then what policies we're having. And I just think that would be kind of a clearer way for us to operate. Again, we've been in crisis mode for a couple years, and I really want to get back to articulating what our priorities are, and then for us to demonstrate that we're making progress in those priorities. So again, I have October, January, June. That doesn't mean we can't do reports every month. You get a financial report every month, and again, it's very similar to that, where Nicole has a format. You have an expectation that you're going to see the financials, and there's very little drama associated with the reporting. So again, I don't want to do 50 because then that takes too much time. But if you could think about some key things that you're interested in, again, connected to learning, and then connected to equity. And then I think thriving I'm really interested in, because that is the particular adjective that the school committee incorporated into their equity statement. I like the word. I think it's a great way to think about learning. And so, but there's no clear test for thriving, obviously, but that might be, we can create something. Maybe we do some school climate surveys for older kids. Maybe we talk to parents about what it is that, again, school climate for parents. And again, I don't want to just do surveys, but we should also have a lot of internal data that we can discuss or talk about, where I think it would be a clearer way to communicate to the committee that, again, we're making progress in these three areas. I think I beat that horse to death. So after learning, equity, and thriving, again, I think we have finance, and we have facilities. So I think you have initiatives in all of those 5 areas. I really don't want to have any more than 5, because then I say the district that sort of focuses on 10 things doesn't focus on any, so we're going to really focus on that. As part of this, you'll see in appendices where there's a 3-year plan also for ELL, there's a 3-year plan for special education, and there's a 3-year plan for social emotional learning. And so those are also included in here for you to look at. I just want to make sure that I articulate that there's no 3-year plan for DEI. And I want to explain why that is because DEI is incorporated into all of these plans. So it's not something separate that we're doing. It's something that should be built into the district improvement plan and all of our plans. So Mr. Porch has been involved in creating this and has really worked to make sure that that's a foundation from which we built a lot of our other efforts. So again, if you're question why the absence of sort of a 3-year plan for that, it's because it's incorporated into both the district plan and the other plans that you'll see. And again, what you're looking at, then the schools will adopt if we have a new DSE program at the middle school, for instance. So you should see the middle school DSE program in the district plan. Obviously, then Ms. Purchase in the middle school is going to incorporate building up that program, making sure that program is fully included and integrated into the school. She will have that. So you should see that alignment again between school and district. And again, I know this sounds really basic, but the last 2.5 years we were scrambling, and I just want to get back to some common practices where you might even say, I'm really interested in this initiative. Can you give me a presentation on this initiative in a future meeting? Again, and then we can figure out and answer questions. So again, this isn't glamorous stuff. It's kind of very technical stuff, but it's really important for me.
Ms. Massardo, you have a question?
Yes, so I have a bunch of comments on the August 3rd draft that we had, and I want to make sure that they weren't addressed, so I'm going to make comments on this. Do you want us to just email them to you?
That would be great,
okay.
or if you want to set up a conversation,
Okay.
just give me a
Okay.
call, or if you want to stop in, you can stop in. So
Okay.
you'll be voting on this as a document,
Yep.
as a district improvement plan next week, so we'll make sure that we have what you have incorporated. And again, it's a living document, so
Yep.
it's not like it's something that we can't change. So I'm saying if you're feeling like a deadline, this is going to be something that we adjust, but I'd really like to have it working from something that we're all aware of that we're working from. Not that crises won't pop up and not that we won't have to solve issues that we're unaware of, but again, in general, I want to try to communicate what it is we're focused on.
Okay. Just one high level, I think there's like some dates, I see like December 2022, fiscal year 23. I'd love to see more date, like, because it is a 3-year plan, right? So what are we gonna, some of this I assume is gonna take 3 years, some is gonna take 1. I think maybe just be helpful, some of the, I see 2023, 24 school year, just some more dates for some of these, probably be helpful.
And again, through the chair, Ms. Massardo, again, I'm assuming we're going to be working on these for multiple years, and maybe we can reflect that in the metrics. So if we want to give you an update in 2022, 2023, then we can give you sort of demonstrate progress. I'm not sure, like, if we're doing looking at our getting information from our postgrads. That's something that we should be looking at sort of all the time, and it just might be a matter of updating that. And well, let's talk about it, because I understand what you're saying is it should be as a little bit more specific in certain areas, and we can try to add more specificity.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Hyman?
Yeah, I would be interested, and I could send you a list as well if you would like. I would like to see a list of all the district-wide initiatives that we are already doing. I know we're doing Keys to Literacy, we're doing Responsive Classroom, those kinds of things. I also believe that we're doing some pilots like restorative justice, and there may be one on universal design. I'd like to see what those all are, and then see where do those fit into this 3-year plan. And then maybe we can see where there are gaps in order to achieve this plan. Are there gaps? I mean, in general, as a former teacher, I'm concerned about adding more initiatives. That's not usually what I'm looking for. But if there are gaps, then I'd like us to be aware of that. And I know we're doing a lot of district-wide initiatives that address some of these areas, and so I want to publicize, I want that to be aware, us all to be aware of, and to be out there in the public.
Yes, so through the chair, I think some of what you're asking is more curricular, and responsive classroom would be sort of our tier one curriculum for social emotional learning. I guess we can talk about it. I'm just trying to think of, that might be really much too specific for sort of the committee's view. I think we have a social emotional plan, and we're going to be looking at student growth in that area. So let me untangle that a little bit, Ms.
Okay.
Simon, and maybe we can think
All right.
about it, because again, we're not really running any pilots per se. We are running training. We're trying to get people used to some things, and maybe what we talk about in here is articulating our professional development plan and what you should look for. Again, if I were sitting in your seat, an alignment between the professional development we're providing and paying for, and the areas that we're emphasizing. So that's kind of what I would look for. Is if I were looking in your seat, I would be looking for alignment. There's going to be some things that we try. There's going to be some things that don't work out. But we individual curricular type decisions. I'm not sure necessarily belong in here,
Okay.
but let me think about it some. And
Okay.
again, I want to answer all your questions, and I want to incorporate them, but I don't want this to be so specific that it shouldn't be like an operations manual. I'm just trying to communicate that we are sort of prioritizing learning. Obviously, we're a learning organization, and sort of equity and thriving, and some of the things that we are working on in those areas. And you should be able to ask questions about that, because we're tying, even our evaluation system, then we're tying how we evaluate to those three areas as well. So again, alignment is something that this is a fairly big organization. Again, we teach kids from age 3 to 18. We have it's kind of messy, and trying to bring some order to that in terms of how we talk about it is the intention of this document.
So
Thank you.
I would, if I could continue, I do think there's a lot of really good things in here. And I want to just name some of them, because the people who may be listening to this don't have the document in front of them. And I think it's really important. I appreciate that you highlighted the curriculum review. That would be an ongoing thing. I think that's a really important piece for us to be beginning and to continue to do. You mentioned the warm demander in the document, which is a way of approaching students where they feel supported and belonging, but they also feel pushed and challenged to be the best they can and to do all of what they're able to. I also am glad to see that there's an evaluation of BEAM listed in here. That's something I think we all feel is an important piece. We've been talking for a number of years about the portrait of a graduate, and if I understand it correctly, the portrait of a graduate is an idea that the district has an idea of what we want our students to be able to do when they leave our district, so therefore we can then build in what we're offering them, what we're teaching them, what we're helping them learn in those ways. There's also another area, where's the other? With HR, there, systems and procedures. I think there are a number of specifics in here that are good, that I do look forward to seeing us make some progress with efficiencies. And I'm also very eager to hear, I believe, I don't know if it's still on track, but we were going to be hearing in October from Blackprint of the equity audit, and I'm really looking forward to hearing that. And I hope that we'll be able to use that information to help us inform, in particular, what is it we want to be focusing on? What are our metrics they may have some metrics that we can then start, that could be our baseline, and we could go forward and look at those things. So I think there's an awful lot of really good things in here, and I didn't even get around to reading all the specific plans for English learners and special education and those other areas. So I just think I think this is really good. We've gone through this twice before, and it has been kind of vague, and I think we're more on track to be more specific and make it a more useful process. So thank you for all of that work.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. And Ms. Monaco?
Frankly, I think this document is somewhat overwhelming. There's a lot in it, but it's also very general. So I'm not going to go into it the way others have. There are two things that I want to say, and probably both are too specific for a discussion about this document. They may both be based more on curriculum. One is, I think that there should be a more specific overview of where we're going and what we're doing with DEI. I find, well, it's in everything. Well, where? Where is it in everything? And I think that it's lacking. I think community-wise, people want to know where we're going and what we're doing. And I would like to see that. Last time I brought it up, I got shouted out of the room. But anyway, my other comment, and this is completely different, and it's curriculum, and you're going to be like throwing your water bottle at me, but I would like to see more staff in the elementary schools trained in alternative reading methods, like Wilson and Lindamood Bell. Now, I know they have some training, but the way those programs work is to be really good at teaching those methods. You need to do it all the time, and you need to be very well trained. There are different levels. You take the introductory course, you take the secondary course, you take the third course, and you get to be really specialized at it. And I know there are some other communities around that have trained their teachers, and I feel like that's something we're lacking. And I would like to see at least some of our teachers in each elementary school trained so that they become really, really proficient at teaching in those alternative reading methods. And like I said, it probably is not part of this discussion, but it was an opportunity to bring it up. And you didn't throw anything at me yet.
No, I didn't throw anything. It should fit in here, and so I think that's and I think it is part of our planning, and it should fit in there, and I think that's it is a little bit granular for this, but I certainly understand that's a priority. So
to me, it is. It's kind of a hot button.
I get it, and I think that's something that we can certainly incorporate into our plan. And I know we're working on already. I just think fundamentally, our conversation should be largely values based, and then sort of the staff has a lot of expertise to operationalize those values. And you should see, again, I'm just really want you to look at alignment, and then we can talk about some agreements. If we're trying to meet the needs of all learners, all struggling readers, that would be a value. And then what you're talking about is operationalizing those values, right. And we can certainly have that conversation. What I mean by DEI being embedded is it's not really a thing. So when we showed the information in terms of We Are Burlington, I mentioned that we have 20% of our students who are economically disadvantaged as defined by the state or the federal government or something like that. What embedded DEI means is if we're talking about a curricular experience like a field trip, when we do our planning, we just have to make sure that we're planning for the percentage of students who may not be able to, we're accounting for their access to that field trip ahead of time. We're not doing it after the fact. So that's all I'm saying in terms of DEI. I don't think it's necessarily, there's not a thing. It's just something that we need to know who our students are, our families are, who we're serving, and making sure that that everyone can access sort of the opportunities that we are providing. This community does that incredibly well, again, already by not having fees for participation in athletics or performing arts, by providing transportation for everyone. That causes other headaches, which we're going to talk about shortly. But all I'm saying is access is sort of, for me, what that is all about, and then the outcomes of what we do, we need to see if there's having a disparate impact. So again, attendance might be one of those things where our overall attendance might be 90%, but is that true, again, amongst all students? And again, I don't want to pick on any particular group, but there may be a group, let's say our ELL students, that aren't attending as well because maybe we're not communicating to families in the 57 languages that we should be communicating them in. So that's not necessarily, again, if you say attendance is a value, then we need to respond to that attendance. So I think we need to talk a little bit more about it, but there's no sort of formula for that. It's for DEI, Ms. Monaco, but it's just something that we need to talk about. Are all students that we're serving having access to what we're providing, and then if we're seeing different outcomes as a result of that access, why? There may be no good reason. It just may see different results. But again, it may generate some questions as to what we're doing. So that's what I mean when it's sort of embedded in everything. It's just about the questions that we ask as a result of that, and we'll be providing some of that information to you again in terms of metrics moving forward. And again, the attendance one is sort of the one that just came into my head. I'm not sure that's even the best example. So next week, I keep saying at our next meeting, but it's next week. I'll try to incorporate any changes that you want, but again, would be looking for this. But you'll also see then my goals attached to this in the packet. So then essentially what you're saying is then this is really what we're going to be focusing on. It is very dense, but we have a lot of work to do, and there's a lot going on. So if that's also what you get from this document, then I think that's also what we're trying to convey.
Thank you. Any more questions, Ms. Simon?
This is also a tangent, but raising the issue of DEI, we've made a commitment as a committee to do ongoing training for ourselves in the DEI area, and I know that you've been thinking about it, Dr. Conti, but I don't know if at this point it makes sense for us to wait until after the equity audit, and there may be something concrete that we could look at and talk about in terms of focus areas, but I do want to raise the issue again. I'm very concerned that we continue doing the DEI training. I think we all have something to learn, and it may be that we answer questions. Mrs. Monaco has mentioned that she doesn't she asked about how is DEI related to this document that we just got. That could be a topic, for example. I mean, I'm not saying what it should be. It could be any question from any of us as well, but I just would like to request that we continue to look at making that happen. I know it's hard with 5 of us in our schedules and such, but I don't want to let it drop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simon, and Ms. Monaco has a comment as well.
Yeah, it isn't really so much specifically with this document, Martha. It's that DEI is clearly very important. And I think that we've seen some members of the community struggling to understand what it is that we're doing with it. Do we have an overview? Do we have a curriculum designed around it? Is it just an overall kind of like a school, a guidance counselor or a social worker that helps people with individual problems? Is that what we're doing, or do we have some sort of a curriculum-based overview of diversity and equity and inclusion? And I am just suggesting that maybe we could do a better job of explaining to the public exactly what it is that we're doing. Or what we think we're doing, or what we're planning to do, or...
Thank you, Ms. Monaco. And Dr. Conti, did you want to make any comments? Okay. Can we move on? All right. So the next item is Spanish exchange trip.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, the Spanish Department is asking for school committee to approve an exchange program. It's in its 5th iteration. During the last trip, we had 30 Burlington High School students and 30 Spanish students from Lazaro, Cardenas, and Colado, Spain. We exchanged that. The Burlington High School students would be in Spain February 9th to 24th. There's 6 days of school missed, and the Spaniards would be in the United States March 20th to April 2nd. The cost of the trip is approximately $1,700 per student, and we are looking into ways to supplement that. Again, the itinerary, I believe, was in your packet. And then there are likely 4 chaperones, and Mr. Foss, I think you already volunteered. Is that correct?
C.
Okay. So we would do that. And again, the goal is, it's a cultural and school exchange. Students will live with Spanish family, follow a student to engage fully in the Spanish way of life and with Spanish language. And then they'll take some field trips within Spain to Madrid, Sevilla, and Toledo, and a weekend trip to Granada. So for those of you who are on the committee from prior exchanges, some of the students have come to the committee and really talked about it being a incredible experience and a highlight of their school careers in Burlington. So again, I would support the committee, and I'm enjoying getting back to more, again, typical votes and practices. And then, so I would support this trip, and again, ask for the school committee's support.
I move that we approve.
I actually have a question.
You should have a motion before you ask.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I move we approve the Spanish exchange trip as presented to us.
Second.
Any discussion? And I know I have a question. So in the past, you mentioned something about looking for funding, I suppose. How are these usually paid for? Because I think some of us started on this committee right at COVID. There wasn't a lot of traveling going on. So I just want to understand how it works.
Well, again, families can pay if they so choose. I think we also have a financial aid policy that we have. This isn't necessarily a curricular trip, it's an extracurricular trip, so there are rules around that. But I also think we're looking for sponsorships from others. And again, that's really where the DEI conversations come in. Again, this isn't part of our curriculum per se, it's really an extracurricular activity. So we don't necessarily have to require the access conversation is a little bit different here, but it is something that I think that we would want to be mindful of. And the school committee did create a policy, and we would look to support students as much as we can. And I'm not even sure the teachers running this may have some sort of fundraiser that I'm unaware of that's attached to this that I could certainly inform the committee of later. I just don't know. I don't have those details.
That's okay. It was just a general question. Anyone else have a comment? Ms. Massaro?
I just have a comment that I was thrilled to see this on the agenda. I'm really, really happy that we're able to get these types of things back. I think they're very important. I'm committed to international travel, and I think it's great that these high school students can do it and learn Spanish at the same time. Question, is it application, or is it just whoever wants to go and has taken the appropriate Spanish class can go?
Yeah, I think it's run
Okay.
through the Spanish department,
Okay.
and I think
Just curious.
they do that. And so I don't know if there's a selection process or not.
Okay, just curious.
Okay. Yes, Ms.
If I could
Summers.
add, one of my daughters went on this Spanish exchange, and it's a wonderful experience, and I hope that we'll be able to continue it. I mean, 30 students is actually, may be as many students as might be interested, and I hope that we'll be able to, as many students who are interested would be able to go. So, I think we're all pretty supportive of this idea, and if the teachers, it'd be interesting to know what their criteria are, but if we can be of help with making it happen for the most, making it accessible for all the students, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a first and a second, and we've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye. All opposed? I'm an aye, so it's 500.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that gets us through the Learning, Equity, and Thriving section and moves us on to Facilities and Finance.
Correct. So Fox Hill,
I want to pass it over to Mr. Cuna and Ms. Kasha, actually, to talk about Fox Hill. So,
Through the chair.
Mr. Cuna.
Thank you. So September 7th was a particular deadline which we were trying to hit. That means we needed to submit our OPM recommendation and packet to MSBA. Ms. Kosh's help, a lot of help. That packet was completed and submitted to MSBA. So we're in a little bit of a waiting pattern right now. October 3rd is the next important date. That's the MSBA board meeting, which we are scheduled to be on if MSBA approves us to be on that meeting. So there has been a follow-up from the MSBA with some additional information that we need to submit. So we will get that information, or we plan to get that information as soon as possible. But typically, like I said, we met that September 7th date and just waiting for approval from MSBA.
Ms. Massaro?
I'm just going to editorialize, Bob. I know you're very deep in this, but for the folks at home, we have a separate Fox Hill School Building Committee that's a number of parents and local leaders and the full school committee. And then we formed a separate subcommittee to basically determine a project manager who we'll hire and will be working on behalf of the entire town to basically help build the school. So to communicate with the town, work with the town leaders, help us choose a design, help us determine, all of the logistics, the contractor, et cetera. So we went through, we got 8 bids, and the selection committee reviewed them all in about 3 days. And then we interviewed, folks called references. So it was a whirlwind, exciting process. I'm very happy, very, very happy with the group that we chose. And so basically we got that to the Mass School Building Committee, are just waiting for them to approve it. And then hopefully around October, they will approve that, and then we can continue to move forward with that team. And I think I'm very excited. I think they'll be a very good partner. I think it will take a lot of the work off of us, off of Bob. And this team had a lot of knowledge. They had school after school that were the project managers on. And I think that they'll be really, really good for the district.
And I was going to make a comment. It was quite informative. We learned some things, too, which I think we'll be able to take advantage of during the interviewing process. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Monaco?
The particular group that was chosen, I watched the interviews, and I believe it's the group that I'm thinking about, and I thought they did a great job.
It's not public yet, because we have to wait for MSBA.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just, I wondered, some of the discussions about enrollments and building size and all that, I found fascinating, and I'm wondering at what point will we get a chance to actually go into depth on that? It was the whole, how big a building can we have, et cetera.
Through the chair, if I may. So that would be the feasibility study. So while we're in the feasibility phase right now, selecting the OPM will allow us to get to that next part. So during the feasibility, we'll actually look at the design of the building and how it suits Burlington's needs. It should match or align with our educational plan, which then is an opportunity for us to either recreate or update that educational plan as well. And then any additional curriculum or spaces in our building or outside placements in our building as well, too, that we just need to meet in order to build that new Fox Hill.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, when do we get around to reviewing, updating our educational plan and discussing it with whichever group is ultimately in charge?
My impression is that we can begin discussing that with the OPM as soon as we've engaged their services, which is we sign the contract as soon as MSBA approves. But I'm more than ready to start having those conversations as part of the school building committee as soon as they're engaged.
But would we do that at building committee meetings? Would they be at school committee meetings? I guess that's more what I'm looking to find out, is when do we have the opportunity to sit and talk and work on details?
Again, October 3rd, through the chair, sorry. October 3rd is an important date. If we've met all the qualifications and MSBA gets us to that point and does approve us with our application, then we can engage for a contract with the OPM firm. once we have the OPM firm on contract, again, the conversation is really up to the school building committee and then the community as to what they want. So then we just start scheduling meetings.
Okay,
So.
thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. BHS update, please.
There is no update for BHS right now. I would like to comment on the varsity field. So as you look outside, you'll see that we are in a delay. We did have a meeting recently on Friday with the turf installers. 9/20, September 20 is when we are supposed to receive the turf. It is in production. We are being told that. So 9/20 is supposed to be here. 9/21 installation is supposed to start. We're giving a 2-week window based on the recommendation of the turf installers, though they claim that they can get it done quicker. So it looks like October 5th is our deadline right now. We've had to obviously tell some community groups, our own school department groups, athletics, music, and so forth, that they can't use that particular field. That is a burden. The lights on the field itself is a big burden. Using the practice fields doesn't offer us that. Youth groups are now trying to get onto the fields as well, too. So any other extra fields that may have been available throughout town are now being scheduled more frequently. So it really is impacting us having the field down right now. We did try to wait as long as we possibly could before removing the existing turf. Again, based on the timelines that we thought that we had, we tried to minimize the amount of time that the field was going to be down. So like I said, it looks like right now October 5th is the date that we have on paper. I'll be able to update the committee next week. Like I said, once that equipment gets on a truck and starts shipping here, I'll feel a lot more confident with my answers. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kuna. Any questions?
Madam Chair, just one brief comment. Bob, the high school track is closed, correct? That facility is closed.
Correct.
We do have community members who walk on the track, so wanted to apologize that they don't have access to the track at this time. Some people then have moved over to the middle school track, and as we discussed with sort of our COVID protocols, our middle school facility is really being used as a classroom during the day. So there are times when we've asked community members not to be utilizing the track during the school day. So again, I know it's an inconvenience. We hope the high school track will be open soon for the community to reuse sort of outside of school hours. The middle school track, I think, can be utilized. That facility is not closed outside of school hours, but during school hours, that's really a physical education facility for us. And so we just ask that community members not utilize the middle school track during the times the middle school is open. So, and we'll try to have, again, the high school finished as quickly as we can to allow folks to walk.
And I was going to make a comment. I believe there's signage that also lets people know when that track is available, correct? Yeah, okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay. So we'll go ahead and go on to the subject. I know that Dr. Conti's been so excited to discuss with us the bus situation.
Right, so let's, Bob, could you just do some general background, just so everyone knows, like number of buses, and I think the amount of changes that you've incorporated already, and sort of how we go about this process. I think there's a structural flaw that we'll talk about, but I think just before we jump into the structural flaw, this takes a tremendous amount of time, and I do want to give Bob and Peg Allegretto in his office a lot of credit for trying to make this work. So go ahead, Bob.
I'm also going to add Anisha to that list because Anisha Sheikh is now part of central office and is assisting us as well with bus questions, concerns, changes in routes, and any programming. So again, the three of us. But let me go back. So we have a 5-year contract right now with Trombley/NRT. We are in the beginning of year 4. So we've completed 3 full years. This school year is year 4. Next year would be year 5. We have 18 buses in that contract, and that's 18 large 71 passenger buses for general education, and then the options for any specialized transportation such as 35 or 20 passenger buses. Specialized or special ed transportation is not included as part of that contract. So there are some other services that we may either sign some smaller deals, smaller contracts, smaller purchases with in order to transport students back and forth. But the large contract that we're discussing tonight is for the 18 larger general ed transportation to all of our schools, all 6 schools. So every year we're met with some similar challenges. This year is no different than that. We anticipate that every single child is going to be riding these buses. We roll over our school year in August, so between August 1 and August 29th, let's say, we need to build those routes. So based on 3,200 plus students, we take those 18 buses and say over 3 tiers. We have a middle school tier. Our second tier is 3 elementaries, so it's Pine Glen, Fox Hill, and Memorial. And then we have a third tier, which is Francis Wyman in the high school. So those 18 buses run all 18 at the middle school for the first tier, all 18 for 3 elementaries on the second tier, and then all 18 for the high school and Francis Wyman. Now in the afternoon, same exact thing. All 18 buses run all 3 tiers. During the first 2 weeks, we notice that some students are not riding the buses, so then we look to remove any unnecessary stops. We are also met with many requests to change or add additional stops. So that is something that takes some time during the first 2 weeks, learning the routes. We also have kindergarten start after the first day of other students. So even when we plan on some routes that aren't needed to be changed or maybe need to be changed, we still have to wait at least until kindergarten starts to see what their ridership is going to look like. So far to date, as of this morning, we've had 144 requests on our online form for bus inquiries or requests for changes. We had 36 prior to even posting the routes on the website, right? So it's a hot topic, constant. That number 144 is not including any responses, any emails, any direct phone calls, anything like that. That's just on our online form. I would 5 times that number if we're talking email responses back and forth between at least the 3 of us and any emails that you all have received, Dr. Conti and so forth. We have made over 80 individual changes, and that does not including adjusting any routes to load balance or just to adjust time. So those are individual changes. So either one stop at a time, one individual family, one individual house or address. We currently are looking at the routes every single day, multiple times from multiple facets, principals, assistant principals. Again, my staff is involved with that with the bus company. Anything that we can look at to say, why are we taking a left instead of a right? If we drop this stop and move the stop up 3 houses, we can pick up 3 kids here. So if there's a way for us to do that, we're looking, we're listening, we're learning. But what complicates that is that traffic in Burlington is getting worse, right? So we all know that, we all say that, but we're not really doing much about it. We have less than a 30-minute window between our first tier, second tier, and third tier. That 30-minute window is based on school start time. I'm not recommending that we just all of a sudden destroy all of our school start times, but if we need to get across town and back to school, take away traffic in the morning, take away bus stops, trying to do that takes close to 20 minutes by itself. Put 10, 15 stops on a route, 30 minutes cuts that window down to impossible. So we're definitely seeing that at the high school. So at the middle school, because it's our first run, we have time earlier to leave earlier, but we don't have any flexibility on what time we drop off. The middle tier is locked. We can't drop off early and we can't drop off late. So anything that affects that middle tier impacts the third tier. And again, the high school tier is a little bit shorter than even the Francis Wyman tier, even though they're both in tier 3. So that window is so tight. But like I said, if we're at any one of our elementary schools and have to go towards Fox Hill or towards Wegmans or towards Middlesex Turnpike and then back, everywhere we go, we're just hit with traffic. So first and foremost, obviously the parent requests, we try to deal with them as much as we can. There's an increasing number of requests that come in stating that dangerous roads. I'm not contesting that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. We definitely take safety first and foremost as a priority for us. We do get out. We do include the Burlington Police anytime there is safety concerns, or if we question it, or if we actually deny the request. We also seek plenty of other people's advice to see if this is a good play or not, and especially the bus companies, if we have time to do it. I can see you.
Madam Chair, may I ask Mr. Cuda some questions?
Sorry.
Some difficult, really specific questions is, Bob, many districts have a radius around the school where they don't provide transportation. Does that radius exist in Burlington?
It does not.
So we are providing transportation for every student, even the students who live within a quarter mile, half mile of a school.
Maybe students that we could throw a ball to their house.
So again, so we're providing that. And then I just want to make sure the committee sort of heard how we are designing the bus routes in August, because we get many frustrated parent emails about why do you need to redesign so much in the first 2 weeks. We're designing routes based on every student getting a seat on every bus. We're not asking families to choose whether they ride or not, and that might be something that we want to talk about. If we have families who know they're not going to utilize the bus, if they're dead set against it for whatever reason, it's their choice, if they can let us know that, then Bob doesn't need to design for 3,200 students. Maybe he needs to design for 2,800 students, and then we won't need to basically redesign, because we have school buses stopping where there may not be any kids the first couple weeks, and that's the information that we need. So we are forced to redesign because we are providing a seat for every student, whether they're riding the bus or whether they're not riding the bus, and we have to make that adjustment in real time. So that's part of the design flaw that we have. Again, as Bob talked about, we have restrictions in the 3 tiers, and we will acknowledge the high school buses aren't getting to the high school on time. So that's not a surprise. There's not enough time to get from tier 2, pick up the high school kids, and get to the high school by 8:30. So we're going to talk about a structural change tonight. And again, never mind the traffic and everything else that we're talking about, but the more stops we add, because I know you get the calls too, the more stops we add, the more time that adds to the routes. So we'd love to drop every student off at everyone's driveway, but then we don't have enough time to make the school. So that really requires us to say yes to some folks and no to some folks. And again, we are trying to prioritize safety as much as we can. But people have a real different idea in terms of safety, and they also have a different idea as to how far away a bus stop is for their child to get to or not, and we're trying to have that. But there are ways structurally to make our transportation more efficient, but that may mean not everyone would have access to that transportation. Again, if you want to create some sort of quarter mile, half mile restrictions around the schools, that's pretty common. But if we want to continue to design for every student, which we're more than capable of doing, it just means the first 2 weeks are always going to be disrupted, because Bob's designing for stops where kids are in our database because they live in that area, and if they're not walking out to take the bus, then we're making those adjustments. Again, we have to make those adjustments the first week, and then when we have kindergartners start, then that's picture day, and then we're all late, and so it's really a couple weeks for us to figure out who's riding the bus and where. So that's it. The specific high school problem is, again, students are the buses are coming in all before 8:40, but not making the 8:30 time. Is that correct?
Correct.
So currently now, the high school day is 8:30 to 2:50. And what we are proposing is moving the high school start time to 8:40 and going to 3 o'clock. And that would give us 10 extra minutes from tier 2 to tier 3. Talk to Mr. Sullivan. He did talk to his building reps. I would need to formally have this conversation. The way our contract reads right now is the high school teachers are required to stay 20 minutes after the school day ends for students. So even now with a 2:50 ending, and I know this is very specific, teachers are out at 3:10. Our proposal is to allow the teachers to leave at 3:10, even if the school day ends at 3 o'clock. So essentially, for this 1 year, we would be shortening the amount of time that teachers need to remain in the building. If students need extra help, Mark said, Mr. Sullivan said he would provide time during the school day, and there's also time before school to get that. But there really is only 20 minutes anyway by contract. I think it wouldn't delay at all the time that students would get to after-school activities. They would be leaving again at the same time. So again, all we would be shifting the high school day 10 minutes to start at 8:40 and to go to 3 o'clock. Teachers would be leaving the exact same time as they're leaving now. So again, we'd be shortening that time by 10 minutes that they would be required to stay by contract, and we'd make that exception for this year. And then I'd like to spend some time prior to next year talking about how we design the routes, because what we're doing isn't sustainable given the amount of traffic that we have and the number of buses that we have. So again, I'm all for transporting all kids, but and I think it's important that we do, but I just think then we have to make people's expectations clear about how many stops that we have and other aspects of this. And Bob and I were talking is maybe just for the high school students, if we could ask them in May or June, who's planning on using the bus. Obviously, they could all use it if they wanted, but if we had a better idea as to who was going to utilize the bus or who wasn't, then we could maybe incorporate that information into our designing. We do have high ridership at the high school. People say they see empty buses, but we probably have, there are about 400 students, Mark says, arriving in the morning, so close to 50% of our student body, maybe 40% are riding the bus. So it is a utilized service, but again, if we knew who that 50% was ahead of time, it would help us.
If I could just add to clarify, not declare, to add. So we only use 9 buses for the high school in our 3rd tier. High school students are larger anyways in size compared to elementary. So that 400 or plus 430 students that are riding equates to 35 to 50 children on the bus. And again, 2 in a seat is pretty full for a high school bus, where on an elementary bus, since they are 71 passenger, that would be 3 per seat. At a high school level, that is sardines. So 40 to 50 kids on a bus is a packed high school bus, and only 9 are being used.
Ms. Massardo?
I have many comments, but I'm just going to stick with this one first. Is there a reason we're going to try moving the start time first rather than trying to sign up for the bus? I mean, 50% sounds good, but it's half, right? So would that save time if we tried you sign up for the bus?
I think we have to move the time because we're designed around the 50% now. So we're late even with 50%. If we were to transport everyone, we wouldn't have the number of buses that we need, first of all, because the buses are kind of full for high school kids, as Bob just said. So we're sort of designed there. All I'm saying is when we do the initial designs in August, we're designing for every high school student to take the bus, and then we're adjusting once school starts. And if we could get that information ahead of time, it's just not what this committee expects. So I just would want to talk with the committee to make sure that you knew what we were doing. And if every high schooler signed up, we would, if your expectation is, then we would design for every high school student. But we're sort of doing that in an order where we don't have that information prior to our design.
Go ahead.
So I think what he's saying is prior to next year, we'll take a survey of how many students are going to take the bus, so we're not in this situation again.
I
right?
grasp that, but so we designed for everyone.
We designed
and then
for 900 plus students, and we've already made changes to all 9 routes at all 9 buses at the high school. And right now, even with those changes, unless we start eliminating stops, we can't get across town and back in the 20-minute window with the current number of stops that we have.
But did you completely redesign the routes, I guess? Yes.
All 9 of them, yep.
And you didn't eliminate stops, or you did?
We haven't eliminated stops. So we've eliminated the stops that were unnecessary due to ridership. We haven't eliminated stops to expand the walking participation from the students.
Okay,
right?
how far do you make high schoolers walk?
That was my next question.
It's not written in stone, but generally we would say if it was 10 houses, that is fine. Based on the street, depending on sharp corners, things like that. Whereas like an elementary student, we may say 5.
Yeah, that was my next question is, I was assuming the high school students could walk farther, which might help reduce.
But again,
number of
every
stops.
neighborhood and every street has a little bit of a different circumstances. So a dead-end street that has 7 houses on it may be different than Mill Street, Cambridge Street, Bedford Street. So those are looked at differently.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yes.
Ms. Monaco?
I have to say that I think it's going to have a negative impact on a lot of students to get out that 10 minutes later. In fact, I know some kids that it's really going to be a problem for. As far as the teacher angle of it goes, and why don't the teachers just come in at the same time they're coming in now and leave the same time they're leaving now? So they'll have 10 more minutes before school, and it will be the same amount of time that they're spending.
Again, I think if they wanted to have the same amount of time, technically they could come in 10 minutes later if they so choose. What we're talking about is, again, contractually, the end of the day. And remember, one of our high school schedules prior to COVID was 8:35 to 3:05. So this
Yeah.
is actually, we have brought back the end time to 3 o'clock. So I think that's a good compromise. We can't get the buses to the high school until 8:40. So until before 8:40, Bob, right? I think they're coming in at.
They're coming in right between like 8:27 at best, with no traffic, every green light. 8:27 at best till approximately 8:38, 8:36, just depending on the day of the traffic. So right now, like I said, 8:30
I
consistently is
understand.
I'm missing your question. then. I
Yeah,
apologize.
so right now, the contract reads how, for the amount of time the teachers are there before classes start.
I think they have to be there 20 minutes. I have to check.
All right,
We-
don't
I
check.
know, but
Here's
I
my
just know the
point.
after-school
Here's-
is.
Here's
20
my
minutes.
point.
They're required to report.
If they had to be there 20 minutes before classes start, right? Then that means if we change classes to 10 minutes later, then they can come in 10 minutes later. But then you want to take 10 minutes off the amount of time after school. So what I'm suggesting is come to an agreement where they come in the time they're coming in now, which will be an extra 10 minutes earlier,
Thank you.
in order to not change it. I mean, you're going to have teachers at the middle school and the elementary school that are like, well, why do I have to have those 10 minutes? You know, why can't all teachers get 10 minutes?
I think
Dr.
that's
Conti,
the
if I can
suggestion.
interject, you sent an email
Yeah.
saying a reminder 2 years ago, before we implemented our new schedule, the student day was 8:35 to 3:05. Teachers were contractually required to report at 8:20, 15 minutes prior to the students, and were contractually required to remain in the building until 3:25 or 20 minutes after student dismissal. So
So my points are two. One is, I don't like the change, not that I wouldn't vote for it if I have to, but I don't like it because it impacts kids that are trying to get to other things after school, like jobs, or practices out of town, or, you know, things of that nature. My other point is that if we have to change the time, I don't think the number of minutes in the teachers' days should change. I can understand they don't want to get out later. But if they're coming in 20 minutes before school starts now, and they continued coming in at that same time, they'd have an extra 10 minutes before school starts.
Yes.
And then only 10 after school got out. And isn't there a certain amount of flex
I
time
think that's what
anyway?
your email states, correct?
Yes.
Isn't there a certain amount of flex time anyway?
There is, Mark, Mr. Sullivan is texting me, and I'm trying to follow what he's saying. So is Mark actually on? Mark, do you want to?
He's not on WebEx.
He's not on, okay. He said there's a flex block for extra help. And again, the day is really, the teacher day is really the same. The reason that I would propose keeping dismissal time for teachers the same is they're not generating the issue here. So it's really, it's our issue, and I do think if I can say, we're shifting the day 10 minutes, which is significant, but your contractual end of the day is exactly the same for this 1 year. I think that would be the compromise that I would look to do that on. If they want to come in at the same time they're coming in now, that's great. They have a contractual obligation to be there before students arrive. And so I think that's 15 minutes at the high school. It's different at every level.
Yeah, so it would be 25 if they kept coming in at the same time.
It would be, but again, they wouldn't have to, but I'm saying they could if they wanted to.
What I sent you.
I'm sorry?
Look at the text I sent you. So I can read it, but it's, so again, from Mark as well to me. So the teachers have an 8:05 to 3:10 day right now. And as Dr. Conti is mentioning, not changing that 8:05 to 3:10 day, even though we're changing when the school starts.
Great, that's what I'm suggesting.
Yes. So I'm sorry I didn't hear you well. I have so many of these times in my head. But what we're trying to do is shift the day 10 minutes to start the high school at 8:40. We can get the buses there, we feel, by 8:40. The other potential thing that we looked at was moving Tier 2, but that would be then rescheduling 3 families' worth of elementary schools in the morning, changing bus stops for those elementary schools. I just think that would be much more intrusive than trying to keep the day
Say that again?
We'd have to move Tier 2. We need to create more time
Right.
between each tier, so we would have to impact our Tier 2 schools
How?
as well.
What would you do?
We'd have to move,
Sorry, if you
go
don't
ahead,
mind.
no, go ahead, Bob.
If it takes 30 minutes to get the middle school kids from their house to the middle school, and 30 minutes to get the next tier from the middle school, pick up kids, and then back to schools, we need 30 minutes to get from the second tier, pick up kids, and get to the high school.
Yeah, no, I'm
We only have-
asking
we
for
only
the
have 20.
alternative.
We only
The
have 20.
alternative
Would
to
be the shift-
changing the
would
high
be the-
school.
would
So in
be
order
the
to get
shift.
that, if we either don't add the 10 minutes in the morning, we would have to take away 10 minutes in the morning, which means now we only have 20 minutes at Tier 2, so we'd have to make up 10 minutes at Tier 1 to get back to that same time. So this impact is going to affect.
So you mean the poor middle schoolers that'd be there in the middle of the night?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
And-
so this would be, again, I don't want to say it's an insignificant change. It is not, but we felt it was the least intrusive thing that we could do. I think again, by keeping the dismissal time for teachers the same, I think that recognizes that this isn't their issue. I think we have longer conversations to have about how we design transportation, and with the 18 buses that we have, we're going to potentially need to change start and end times across the entire district in order to create that 30 minutes between tiers for next year, if you want to keep everything the same. If you want to, again, look at getting more information in terms of who's riding the bus and who's not, while saying anyone who wants to can, if we can get that ahead of time, and if we can look potentially at some distances where we don't transport high school students, for instance, then we may be able to have a little bit more flexibility, and to Mrs. Monaco's point, potentially move the end day a little bit earlier. But right now, as it's currently designed, our high school buses are arriving late because it's not anyone's fault. They don't have enough time to stop at the stops they're stopping at and to get across town. So we can eliminate stops, but then you'll get complaints about limited stops. And so we felt this was the solution that we
Once you
need,
get
but
more
it's temporary. Could get more buses as well, but again, we would have to write that into sort of what we're doing, and there's an expense to that. Our contract, Nicole, is we have one more year after this year. So we would be really designing and writing an RFP, not this year, but next year for our subsequent bus contract. So We do have the safe routes to school stuff, so they can help us look at sort of what we're doing. But we provide more transportation than most districts, and which is a great thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, which is great, but we just have some logistical issues that are, if we don't have enough time between tiers, no matter how we design the routes, we're not gonna make it. And it's not the teacher's fault, and it's not the kid's fault for being late. So we have to create a design that actually gets them to school on time.
And you mentioned, is Mr. Sullivan, did he dial in, want to comment?
He's on the WebEx, yes. I'm not sure if he has a comment or if he was here to answer questions if need be.
No, I can answer any questions. I just wanted to clarify that the length of the teacher day is not changing.
Thank
So
you, Mike.
currently, they're 8:05 to 3:10. That stays exactly the same.
Thank
So
you
there's
for that.
35 minutes before school, and there's now with a 3 o'clock end, there'll be 10 minutes at the end of the day.
That
So the
answers my
the
question.
teacher length of the day is exactly the same.
All right, so I apologize, but that does require me, sorry, that does require me to, if you approve tonight, I do need to work with the BEA to make a change, because the end of the day is going to go from a 20-minute contractual time to a 10-minute contractual
For
time.
this
So-
year only.
For this year only, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and Ms. Monaco, did you get your question answered, or do you want to say something
I
again? And then I'll get
have,
to
I
you.
have other comments.
Okay. Do you have a comment, Mr. Foss?
Just a logistical question. If this is approved tonight, then you work with the BEA. When do you anticipate the change taking place that would affect families?
Already had conversations, sort of Mark spoke to his building reps. I think I've already spoken to that. I'm hoping to give families a couple days, but I'd like to start on Monday, honestly. We need kids in school on
Right.
time.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, maybe. I didn't talk to the bus company, though. So, Bob, so go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that on the bus company, hopefully there are no changes unless we continue to either eliminate stops or adjust the routes for efficiency. But the times that they're getting here match the times that we're looking to change to.
Okay, Ms. Monaco.
Ms. Monaco?
So I guess one of the things that bothers me about this whole situation is that we are driving the opening time of school around busing instead of driving busing around the appropriate, agreed-upon times for school to start and end. So if this is going to be an effort to plan for the future, I don't think we should be tying our own hands by saying every high school kid within so much distance has to walk, or getting the information ahead of time makes a lot of sense, but it clearly didn't make any difference, because you got the information after school started, you readjusted the routes, and it still doesn't work. So even if you had known all of that in August and had adjusted the routes in August, we still would have the same problem. So it boils down to, we don't have enough buses. And I understand it costs more money, but just like we have a class size guideline of 18 to 20, 18 to 22 in an emergency, I think we should have, and we always have had, guidelines that we would provide buses to every student who wanted to take it. And I don't really see that changing unless you make a distance for older kids that they would have to walk if they lived within a quarter mile or half mile of the school. But that isn't going to work, because if you start at the top of the driveway here, by the time you get to the school, you've walked a quarter of a mile. Yeah, so, I just don't see it happening. And I think every time we get in a bus jam, we chase our tails to figure out how we can adjust school times instead of addressing the real problem, which is maybe we need more buses, and maybe it'll cost more money, and so be it. Let's do it right. That's my input. We already changed high school from 7:30 to 8:30. Now we're going to make it 8:40.
Thank you, Ms. Monaco. Ms. Simon?
I feel like there's a lot of different issues that we're talking about because they're all related. What I'm hearing is that I'm hearing a solution being proposed for the problem of the high school kids getting to school late, and that is to shift the high school schedule by 10 minutes and make an arrangement with the teachers to make sure that they're okay with that for this year, in terms of how long they're here after school or before school. And I am not real happy. It's not the best way and the best time to do it, but I feel like that's probably the way to go. I am a little concerned about kids who have jobs. I know it's already an issue. But the question of if we have the late start of school at 8:30 that we decided on a few years ago, I'm actually happy to move it to 8:40 because the evidence that we were reading about said that even 9 o'clock would be better for high schools. So I have no problem in terms of what's good for high school students' sleep and circadian rhythms to move it to 8:40. So I don't have a problem with that, and I think that's a separate issue. Then there's the issue of, in the future, or possibly this year, ask whether we continue to have the same policy where everybody gets allotted a spot on a bus, and then we see who uses it. But I don't feel we need to decide it tonight, but I see that as an important conversation, which is, do we want to try to work out a plan where we ask people in advance, whether it's June, whether it's by August 1st, whatever, if they plan to use the bus, and create our September bus routes based on what people are requesting. So everybody's entitled to a spot on the bus, but if people don't request it. And then, of course, there's what if there's a day when a particular family needs a bus and there isn't a stop within 5 houses, maybe they would still have to go to one of the established stops, but would there be room for them on the bus? But I don't see us resolving that tonight, but I see those are the other issues. And then the other issue is, do we continue to offer a bus to everyone? I know for a while there was a student who lived 1 house away from Francis Wyman who had a spot on a bus. And, there were questions about crossing the road and things like that. But whether we want to go. And then I was going to look up on Google, how far is it from the Burlington Common to the high school? Is that already a half a mile? I think it is. I think it's more than a half a mile. But, there are some students who may live out the other direction and be able to come down from one of the other neighborhoods. So I think those are important things for us to discuss. I don't see, but for tonight, I see us needing to tell Dr. Conti to go ahead with this plan that he's come up with, which I feel like, given the time of year and our bus contract, I think that's where we are right now, and I think it's something we need to continue going forward, how to deal with.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Ms. Massardo?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think I agree with Martha. There's 2 issues here, and I'm happy to support the later start time. The only thing I want to say is that obviously I'm in favor of alternate methods to alternative transportation to schools. Fox Hill has, I think, about 40 to 50 walkers on a normal day. We did a walk to school in May, and they had over 200. So walking to school is not insurmountable in certain areas. It's certainly not available for everyone. I think we want to encourage walking, biking, and bus usage. I think I'm heavily in favor of requesting you sign up for a bus for free. I'm also in favor of talking about a radius around the schools, because I agree that it's a little bit silly if you live next door for there to be a stop there. And I think that can alleviate some, not all, of the scrambling during the first 2 weeks if we aren't making those changes of nobody showed up at this bus stop. So I agree with Dr. Conti mentioned the Safe Routes to School folks. We are working in 3 schools. It also, Safe Routes just expanded to high school. So I think if we really leverage that program, I've seen the audit of Fox Hill. They can expand beyond just the school area, and they can expand to the whole neighborhood, and how to encourage walking, or they have also encouraged like carpooling to, say, like a park where the parents would drop off. I think they suggested at Memorial, parents could drop off at the church if there was 2 crossing guards, so that would alleviate some of the traffic right around the school. Creative solutions like that. I think the parents that get off the roads and away from the school alleviate that bus traffic. They love to say on every single presentation, you're not in traffic, you are traffic, right? So it's the parents going to school, going to work, that are creating the traffic. So I'm very happy to have these conversations going forward, and definitely look at options for next year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So is there an action you would like us to take other than saying that, I don't see that there's a vote we have to take per se?
Again, I think if we're changing the start time from 8:30 to 2:50 to 8:40 to 3, I'd like you to vote to approve the change in the high school schedule from 8:40 to 3 o'clock. And then I will, again, the teacher day is staying the same. I'll just have to make sure that we have that documented with the BEA, and hopefully they will make that adjustment. Again, it's exactly what they're doing now, so I'm assuming that would be acceptable, and the early feedback that we had is that they would be amenable to that, and I think the teachers are really interested in having the kids on time for their classes. So I think this is not a great solution, but it's the solution that we came up with, given the situation that we're in. I just don't want to be in this situation year after year after year, so I just think we'll have to have a longer conversation at some point.
Agreed. Mr. Cuno, you wanted to make a comment?
Sorry. I don't want to keep repeating. I do just want to comment that at the first tier and second tier, we're getting close to our limits as well, too, where we're not over. So I'm not looking to change any times there. But I think in general, it's great for you to understand that the traffic has caused us to alleviate any free time that we had. So even when we do have like a maximum efficiency routes, instead of having an extra 10 minutes or 5 minutes, you know what I mean, we're kind of stretched to that point where, you know, even 1 or 2 more minutes left, and then we risk being late for our next tier. So like I said, it's just something that we have to look at every year, and it wouldn't be us presenting to you all to change times, you know, if there was an easier solution or a solution that just meant more work, you know, for myself or my team. So again, asking this really just means that we've exhausted a lot of options.
Thank you. Ms. Massardo?
I'm happy to next year visit if we need more buses. I would love to encourage non-car driving, but I think buses are efficient. I'd love to get kids to walk instead of take the bus too, but I'm happy to visit that. But one thing that I think has been really clear of this past 2 weeks of buses showing up whenever late and early, is that I'd love to, with a new contract, or if we're talking about increasing transportation funds, I know some districts now have apps where the parents can follow the bus, so they know if it's late, they know if it's on time, things like that. So I'd like to invest in efficient and transparent transportation. I'm not against adding more buses if our enrollment and traffic supports that, but those are things I'd rather look at if we're going to increase the operations budget there. I also think that we did the one Safe Routes survey, which was not ideal. So if we could think about why aren't you taking the bus? What would encourage your family to take the bus? What would encourage you to walk? Like some more specific. I know you don't like to survey to death, but I think at some point, if this is something we want to revisit as a whole in the spring or over next summer, I think that's also important.
Ms. Simon, you had some comments too.
I also wanted to just confirm, last year there was an issue with some of the students coming from way over on the side of over on the other side of town, where there's some new housing, and has that issue been, that's not an issue, is that an issue this year, or is that something else that's going on?
It's in addition to what's going on, right? So it's still compounded. The further we are away, the more traffic we hit. Middlesex Turnpike, Mall Road, Cambridge Street are busy.
Are we continuing with that extra bus that we implemented last year?
We are.
Okay, so is that addressing it for now?
it helps us make the routes more efficient, but it
Okay.
still doesn't get us
Okay.
perfectly on time.
And my last question, and are those kids getting to school on time? Is that bus arriving on time? Not always, huh?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Not at 8:30.
Not at 8:30.
Ms. Monaco?
Will they get to school on time with the change?
If we stayed right now with the time that the buses are arriving and moved to 8:40, that extra 10 minutes, yes, students would be here on time. Right now at 8:30, 1 to 3 buses are on time, and then 6 or so buses are late because of 8:30.
How late?
Depending on, it could be 1 minute to 6 minutes, depending on the day.
Less than
And then they
10?
have to get to
Yeah.
class.
So if we were to look at this going forward, and if we did have, say, another 2 buses than what we have now, and we planned it that way, could we divide the routes differently so that we'd have more time, the smaller runs?
So we modeled that last year, again, through the chair, sorry. We modeled that last year, and we begin to model it this year. We don't have the software to do it, but the bus company does. And the way that they route that, typically what they see is that adding a bus helps a pocket or a neighborhood. It doesn't necessarily help a continued route, right? So let's say you do have 50 kids, and then you turn around and split them across 2. Depending on where those 50 kids are, it's that travel time, right? So the number of stops in between are really that 1 to 1.5 minutes, but it's that travel time. So what we did is, in order to cut down that route, we added that additional bus, and it saved us about 5.5 minutes on that one route, but it still ends up being like an 18 to 20-minute route in order to do those 3 stops.
Does the bus company try to, puzzle out the various things, like if in Tier 2, one bus gets to its elementary school earlier than, say, another bus, does that bus then tackle the longest run to the high school?
Yes, so no, it doesn't happen, but yes, we do address that. So we don't send a Fox Hill bus over to behind Old Navy, up at the, east corner
Yeah, a
of that.
Francis Wyman bus will go up there. right.
Exactly. So in proximity to the school, once they drop students off, in this case, maybe it's a memorial school because Francis Wyman's on the 3rd tier. Then we'll have the memorial school, once it leaves there, head up towards, let's say, the Wegmans area and so forth, to then come back to the high school. And then Fox Hill buses will typically do around Wilmington Road or maybe behind the reservoir and come up this way.
Yeah.
Pine Glen buses will jump on the other side of 62 and come back. So, yeah, we do try to make that the most efficient way that we can. So even still, that 18 to 30 minutes on the first tier, once we get and drop the students off, then we may have to use 23 minutes on the second tier, just because the way the routes work.
Right, and to address the students, first of all, I agree with you, Melissa, that we should not have so many parent, cars, traffic, driving, especially since we do provide the buses for all of the kids. But, one of my kids, all of her children walk to Fox Hill because they can. It's not that far, they walk. But for people that are a little further away than that, especially when the weather gets colder, and it might rain, or it might snow, or it might just be cold, and they have little kids, and they want to be able to see them, so they don't want them to walk in a lot of different kinds of weather. And so that's why I think it's important that we provide the buses. It's a safety factor. And I think it's an important piece of what we do, so that as we approach this issue going forward, we need to figure it out better so that we don't run into this problem again and again. Like I've said, I don't like this solution, but I'll vote for it because it seems to be the only thing we can do right now. But maybe we'll think of something else in short term, even before the end of the school year.
Okay.
No, huh?
Try everything.
Any more discussion? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to adjust the high school start time from 8:30 to 8:40.
Second.
Any additional discussion?
Just,
Do
may
we-
just require a friendly amendment, and just while keeping the teacher
Schedule.
times, teacher schedule the same, is if I,
Yep,
Ms. Sardo,
I
if you could
move
add.
to adjust the high school start time to 8:30 a.m.
No,
Well, from 8:30 to 8:40 a.m. while
And-
keeping the teacher's times the same.
And you need the
And
end
the end
time
time.
as well.
And the end time,
At
3:10.
3 o'clock for
2:50 to
the
3
students. 3 o'clock for the students.
3 o'clock.
Right.
Second.
Okay, we've had discussion. So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I'm in favor, so 500.
Thank you.
Okay. So there is need to have executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school district, and the chair so declares, BEA union contracts. I would like to have a motion, please,
So
to go into
moved.
executive session.
So moved?
You second it?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Ms. Massardo?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. We're in executive session.
Are we moving?